I'm kind of hit and miss with Seth Rogen. And even as like a voice actor, when it was announced that, all right, he's going to be doing the voice of Alan the Alien. Well, he's just going to sound like himself, and he'll do the...
Yeah, it'll be good.
He'll just do that, right?
Hello, and thank you for checking out the video. I just want to let you know that I not only create content on my YouTube channel, Class in the Glass, but I'm also on Twitch, where I review movies, cartoons, and TV shows live, while also playing single-player games and multiplayer games. I also have a Patreon, where subscribers have access to hundreds of video and audio commentaries for films and cartoons, as well as podcasts and videocasts. In the meantime, thank you again for watching, and enjoy the video.
Now, my friends, let's go ahead and move on to my final review for this evening, and that is for Invincible Season 2, Episode 3. I've been reviewing Invincible on a weekly basis, chat. I want to do more like TV show reviews on like a weekly basis. Just in the month of October, I was just so overwhelmed of so much content and spoiler reviews that it just became like really difficult. But for Invincible, I want to do it because well, for one, I've been really enjoying this season, chat, and it's it's superhero genre content coming out in a time where we're being inundated of a lot of that type of stuff, obviously, but I would describe it more as superhero genre alt content. It's not doing the typical things we most often see from, like, for example, the big two, like Marvel and DC. It's kind of pushing the genre in a different direction, subverting expectations, I think, in a really clever way, but also just being, for the most part, a very well-written show featuring fantastic characters and obviously fantastic vocal performances from a huge cast this season, both veteran voice actors and obviously celebrity voice actors as well. I'm going to kind of give you a bit of a background for this particular episode. While Mark is acclimating to college and takes the next big steps, next big sexy steps in his relationship with his girlfriend Amber, Debbie Grayson struggles with her grief and guilt while interacting with other people who Omni-Man had a terrible impact on. And we also learn more about Alan the Alien and the coalition of planets. Now, I've talked about my thoughts on the Invincible comic, way back in the day, I remember reading Invincible, God, at this point, 20 years ago? Again, before, Ultimate Spider-Man, before Robert Kirkman, I think, really made it big with The Walking Dead. Obviously, Invincible comic was, like, one of the first things people went, wait, who is this guy? Well, who's Robert Kirkman, right? I was one of those people, too, and I really loved the book. And, you can check out my previous reviews as to why I thought that comic was so great. Again, I don't think it wrapped up very well. But thankfully, one of the great things about this adaptation, and I'm so happy they've been so open and honest about it, is they like, hey, listen, that book was from 20 years ago. There are some dated aspects to it, and so we need to update that. and I appreciate it. And they're making a lot of, I think for the most part, maybe I have like maybe an issue of, I don't know, like 1-2 things, kind of. But for the most part, like all the updates they've been making, I think have absolutely been great. Especially for a number of what originally were kind of secondary or tertiary characters have now been put in the forefront as some of the leading characters in the show. And there's one character in particular I'm so happy that they've been making so many changes to. Now, getting into the episode itself, I like how this particular episode is kind of briefly focusing on Mark's college life. The awkwardness of being away from home, letting go of childish things, right? And the freedom to escalate one's relationship with another person without the prying eyes of a parent. Like, I like how that episode kind of opens up with all that. It doesn't really even indulge in any of the superhero like shenanigans that we've seen in the show. We're just kind of following this teenager, and he's like, oh, I'm a little nervous. I feel a little weird being away from home and not having mom there, and certainly not having dad there, and I'm with my friend, and we're putting our room together. It's like, I like that. Like, they actually take the time to focus on these, especially relationships we haven't really seen that much this season. It's been a while since we've been with Mark and his friend and other kids his age that don't have superpowers. I mean, the big thing in this episode, obviously, for Mark, Chad, is Mark and Amber finally have the sex. They finally have the sex, chat. And it's as cute and as awkward and as weird as you'd expect it to be. I really like how they kind of handled that entire sequence with them. I found it very amusing, and how Mark is just stuttering and stammering. It's kind of like Amber's taking charge. He's like, we can have sex right now and everything. He's like, oh yeah, I guess we can have sex right now if you want to. Do you want to have sex? She's like, yes. He's like, oh okay. And like even before they, right before they even they start smooching and all that, he's like, okay, like Stephen Yu's performance that he captured just being like a super awkward, teenage boy, I think incredibly well. And then when he's like trying to be like sexy, and then they kind of start having these conversations like, wait a minute, if we start having sex, can you like they bring up a great question. Like, do you have like super semen? Do you have like super sperm? He's like, I don't know. I think it's regular. Like, it's like, what? We never see a scene like this in Marvel or probably like DC, right? If anything, it would be maybe like in a comic or something like that, like Spider-Man Reigns or whatever. But we would see it more in like alternative content, like the Boys. So I think they would be like certainly more gross with it, more crass with it. Like, despite what the subject that they're talking about, it was kind of adorable. He's like, I don't really know. I think it's, from what I've seen, it's okay. He's like, all right, well, I have these condoms just to be sure. He's gonna shoot right through that condom and right through her. She'd be like a speeding bullet through tissue paper. But I thought that was really, really amusing. And they're trying to figure, it's these two sweaty kids just trying to figure each other out and what the other likes and what the other doesn't like, while engaging in the sex. And like for any parent watching this, it'll probably be awkward, but for teenager, for anyone who has common sense, like this is a really amusing, fun scene. I like that. And you even have like the inclusion of this narrator who comes in is like, oh, this is getting a little too hot and steamy. So let's go ahead and transition from this storyline, and we'll go ahead and we'll focus more on Alan the Alien, which, of course, we briefly met Alan the Alien in season 1. And, he's a very popular supporting character from the comics. And we also learn about the coalition of planets who, are seemingly opposed to the Viltrumites, the Viltrum Empire. Seth Rogen, he's interesting to me. Seth Rogen as an actor and a voice actor, I've always been kind of like, he's done some great stuff, Seth Rogen. He's made some great comedies. He's written some wonderful things. He's produced some great things, directed, written, obviously. But then there's like other things of his that I don't particularly care for. I'm kind of hit and miss with Seth Rogen. And even as like a voice actor, when it was announced that, all right, he's going to be doing the voice of Alan the Alien. Well, he's just going to sound like himself, and he'll do the...
Yeah, it'll be good.
He'll just do that, right? But thankfully, Alan the Alien, he's such a... even though, like, what he's doing is, like, very serious, he kind of has this very amicable and goofy personality that is very... kind of, you're engendered towards it. And, even though I never pictured Seth Rogen's voice coming out of him, hearing him as Alan it's actually really good. He's able to balance yes, they do a lot of comedic stuff with Alan, and he's kind of, again, it's funny, some of these characters in this episode are kind of like awkward and adorable, especially when they're with their significant others. Like the case is like Mark and Amber, and Alan, he also has his own paramour, he also has his own girlfriend, lover, and I actually really like their back and forth and how cute it was. And he's kind of like a big dork when he's talking with her and flirting with her, which I think was nice. And he's like, I really liked his performance, because he was able to balance, he was able to have all the goofy stuff, and that worked well. But even if the more serious things that he was talking about, and like what he was doing, what he plans to do, what he's involved in, he handled that pretty well too. Like I actually liked it quite a bit. Now, the animation. So once we transition from like the stuff on Earth, and we get like a backstory of Alan and Alan's people, which are these Cyclops people, Cyclopses? I don't know, Cyclops people. And the animation introduced to his history is like mostly still imagery. And, while I would prefer all of it to be in motion, I mean, if you had to save money, I guess this would be the place to do it, obviously. It's like, hey, let's just do kind of like almost like a clip show, and these images, like you can look at, like, it's almost like you're reading a history book or something, and they kind of move it slightly a little bit. Because thankfully, though, like after that introduction to him and his origins and why his people joined the Coalition of Planets and why they made Alan and things, then the animation returns to normal, and we get a terrific and terrifying fight scene with Alan the alien that I think a lot of people went, oh my God, it's one of two of the most shocking moments in this episode. But this is the most time we spent with Seth Rogen as his character, and I had my misgivings initially, but I can safely say that he does a really good job, and both of the comedic stuff, but also with the dramatic work. I liked. I mean, what they ended up doing with him was like, it shocked me and surprised me, and I felt something. So, and that's part of his obviously the writing, of course, but also his performance. We're also introduced to a new character, Peter Cullen, which you chat, you know it's him before you even see his character. You can hear that voice. Who plays Thaddeus, who is the leader of the Coalition of Planets, who again are opposed to the Viltrumite Empire, are trying to prevent their empire from basically swallowing the entire universe. And we don't learn a lot about him, but Peter Cullen's voice acting is as great as you'd expect it. It's always kind of interesting to hear like Optimus Prime's voice coming out of different characters. But it's a voice that demands attention. It's a voice that demands respect, and you're instantly paying attention to every single word, every single syllable that's coming out of his mouth. And I imagine he's going to be an important figure later on in this particular season, especially what how they end something with him. I was like, well, that's interesting. So I'm looking forward to obviously coming back to that, but a fine introduction to Peter Cullen's Thaddeus. But for me, Chad, the real standout of this particular episode, and honestly, probably this season so far, is Debbie Grayson. You know, she's in a really vulnerable place because Mark has left home to go to college, and she's feeling like really lonely. She's feeling truly alone. You know, she's recommended by Olga, who was in a previous episode, who was the wife of the speedster character that Omni-Man murdered. She's recommended by Olga to go to basically like a superhero spouses anonymous therapy session. Like this group where they talk about the trauma that they've experienced while being in a relationship with superpowered individuals, whether by the people they were in a relationship with or by outside elements that affected them and their spouse or their partner. The interesting thing is about this, though, and the problem for her is that she can't reveal too much about her own experience because she was the wife of Omni-Man. And there are people in that group that were directly affected by him. And we get some like really awkward moments where, and she's trying to keep it together as these people are talking about something that Omni-Man might have done to one of their spouses, one of their partners. And she's like, I don't know how to handle this. You know, she's getting constant emotional whiplash because this is supposed to be a place where she can open up, but she still can't because she'll most likely be ostracized by this group. It's scenes and moments in this episode, like those specific moments where Sandra Oh, who's the voice of Debbie, where she really gets to shine. And I'm just happy this character is getting more to do, since she was pretty much relegated to being a nothing character in the original series. Like, she's there in the first few issues, I guess, and, you know, she obviously learns of everything that's going on with, you know, Omni-Man. But then after that, they kind of just relegate her to being a stereotypical wine mom, where there are just so many, like occasionally like Mark would come back home and she'd just be fucking drinking herself to near death. And that's really all they ever did with her. Like all these things that they include here in the show, I think are great. And I just love that this focus is on her and not just Mark. Like she is, you can honestly describe her as a co-lead to this series with Invincible. I would say it's Mark and it's her. And I really like that change because I was wondering, it's like, oh, so she's just going to be relegated to the stereotypical wine mom, like she was in the comic. And no, they've done the opposite. And that's one of the great updates they've made to this property. And it shows what, Robert Kirkman could have done. But even he probably realized, like, yeah, I messed up with this character. I made her a nothing character, a stereotypical character. And now we're going to give her an arc. We're going to she's going to have her own struggles, and she's going to deal with her own trauma, much in the same way that Mark has to deal with that, but also being the superhero. So really love what they're doing with Debbie. And she has my favorite scenes in this episode. It's just, and all, it's not even in this. So what's so great about this show, what's so wonderful about this show, and the same case with something like Arcane too. I compared those shows because they have a lot of in common. Because some of the best moments are when people are just talking to each other, when they're just having conversations. Like, yes, there is spectacular animation, and there's wonderful fight scenes, and this episode absolutely has that. And there's blood, and there's gore, and there's shocking moments. But it's the scenes when you have two characters talking to each other in a bar, and one of them says something that completely changes the other character's emotions and disposition, and they don't know how to handle. It's like that's when you're watching something special. And I think they did that so well in this particular episode with her character. And then the ending of the episode, like, Mark ends up having to abandon pretty much his college career before it even starts, as soon as it begins, and has to assist like a far off distant planet of like bug boys and bug girls with an ecological disaster. I think it's like a meteor shower or something. And, that leads into one of the best cliffhangers of the series so far, and a reintroduction to one of the show's most popular characters. And it sets up what I imagine is going to be a huge episode 4. And there's going to be, I can only imagine, a lot of words exchanged, a lot of heated arguments, and a lot of fists being thrown. And it's going to be bloody, it's going to be gory, there's no doubt about that. It'll be action-packed. But the thing that I'm most interested in, much like in this episode, is the conversations these characters are going to end up having. That's the thing I'm really, really interested in seeing. How is this going to play out? It's like, yeah, we're going to get to the end result will be a big bloody brawl. There's no doubt about it. But what will lead up to that big bloody brawl is the thing I'm most excited about. And so, yeah, I think this was I think this might be my favorite episode of the season so far. This is a really good episode. And again, if you guys have not yet checked out this series, I recommend it. You don't need to read the comic. You can if you wish to. But what's so great is that I think they've been doing such a great job of adapting this material. You don't have to read the original book. You'd probably be even more surprised than like me watching it, because I kind of know like the major beats of this series. And so going in blind might be the ideal way, the best way to consume this animated show. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Invincible. What about you guys? How do you feel about Invincible season 2 so far? Are you liking it? Are you not liking it? Do you like the changes, like with Debbie Grayson, for instance? Let me know.
I hope everyone enjoyed the video, and I want to take the time to tell you about my Patreon, Class in the Glass, which offers hundreds of film commentaries and video reactions to numerous movies, TV shows, and cartoons. If you're a fan of shows like Batman the Animated Series and Avatar: The Last Airbender, or films like Aliens and Raiders of the Lost Ark, my Patreon is the platform for you. Currently, I'm doing a subathon to reach 75 subs on the platform. If we hit 75 subs, we'll be able to start voting on the next edited YouTube reaction, which will include actual clips and scenes from the movies and shows I comment over. Choose from such films as Fire and Ice, Masters of the Universe, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, or Spawn. Subscribing at any tier level is appreciated, and feel free to give feedback at any time. Thank you again for watching the video, and see you next time.